Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. I got a really good feeling about this morning's broadcast. We've got a lot to get to as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio. As always, you can text at any time. As a matter of fact, we've already received our first virtual wave. I'm going to add that to the counter. That is the number next to the virtual wave. Contact me at any time. I want to start with two local, wow, look at that, coming in. Two local topics. Then we're going to get to some Israel updates and some, unfortunately, anti-Semitic updates that I think are worth noting. Also, we are going to talk about the presidential race, some new polls coming out, some interesting things to watch. But first, look at all of this. Thanks for all the love this morning. 3 virtual waves. Okay. Oh, and also we're going to be talking with the executive director of the Steuben Senior Services Fund, Linda Teeter. She's going to be our guest here in just a little bit. Congressman Nick Langworthy released this statement. He has sent a letter to Governor Hochul regarding the Seneca Nation's gaming compact. I'm sure that some of you have been following this, and as always, I know we lately, after the elections, have been focusing a lot on national news and international news, but I did want to highlight this. I don't believe we've talked much about this in the past. Saying to the governor, we are just weeks away from the expiration of the state's gaming compact with the Seneca Nation, and we've been left in the dark by Governor Hochul. Over 1,000 jobs in my district in the Seneca Nation are dependent on this compact, and these employees deserve to know if their jobs are safe or if their gaming licenses are in jeopardy. Whether it's a new compact or an extension of the current compact, Governor Hochul must provide a timely update. Now, that is set to expire on December 9th, and any new gaming compact must be reviewed by the U.S. Department of Interior before it goes into effect. Governor Hochul is yet to respond to the letter. We will keep you updated on that. Speaking of Governor Hochul, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano released a statement blasting the fact, and I think that term is very appropriate, that the governor signed into law the Clean Slate Act. We've talked about the Clean Slate Act. I'm going to quote the Assemblyman here. I'm extremely disappointed Governor Hochul would sign the radical and criminal-friendly Clean Slate Act. The bill would automatically, get this, as we talk about public safety so often on this program, the bill would automatically seal the records of those convicted of misdemeanors after 3 years and anyone convicted of a felon after 8 years. This is unacceptable, not just to me, but also to crime victims and their families. This is truly an insult to them, allowing those who cause them harm to see their records automatically wiped clean. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. It is not just low-level crimes. This is where it starts to get pretty shocking. It's shocking at face value. But it's not just low-level crimes that will be sealed either. Attempted murder, aggravated manslaughter, gang assault, aggravated assault upon a police officer, criminal use of a chemical or biological weapon, for heaven's sakes. Most kidnappings, burglaries, assault, attempted arson, grand larceny, and endangering the welfare of a child will now be eligible to be sealed. And one of the arguments that some that were in support of Clean Slate Act said, well, these people need jobs. And our thought was, well, and this was some in the business community saying it, we want to hire these people. We'll hire them with the record they have. Wiping it clean does not erase what was done. The Assemblyman continues, violent criminals will now have their records automatically sealed without any judicial review or input from law enforcement, crime victims, or their families. This is unacceptable. Businesses should have the right to know who they are hiring, just as landlords deserve to know if they are renting their property to a dangerous felon. This legislation does absolutely nothing to decrease crime or address the concerns of everyday New Yorkers. And then the Assemblyman wraps up. I know we're running just a little bit late, but this is a part that I wanted to mention specifically. Governor Hochul continues to claim public safety is their most important priority. Yeah, because the only reason that's the case, and the Assemblyman knows this, is for political reasons, because she saw how close Lee Zeldin came against her running on public safety. So now, and I reported on this months ago, but she was working, behind the scenes because she saw that it cost them, meaning Democrats, the House. So it's not really about your public safety here in New York. It is about the political aspect to it. But I'll continue. Again, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. However, once again, it seems Governor Hochul has been bullied by radical progressives instead of standing up for the citizens of New York. Now, this is where it starts to really add up. Whether it be bail reform, raise the age, or clean slate, Democrats in Albany continue to adopt soft-on-crime policies that put the interests of criminals ahead of public safety, crime victims, and their families. It's long past due for New York to reverse this dangerous trend, provide law enforcement with the support and tools they need, and finally adopt common sense criminal justice policies that make sure people are safe and feel safe in their own communities. So many correct statements in that statement from the Assemblyman. But and you look at what this soft on crime approach has done. When you talk about raise the age, we've had story after story of young kids vandalizing, robbing, and then when these restaurants and bars say, "Hey, we're going to call the cops," they say they can't do anything to us. It's one of the many reasons why, unfortunately, people are being forced to leave this state in droves in many instances. Okay, running late. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Received this comment from a viewer already right out of the gate. Good morning, Frank. Just a comment on our governor. The gift that keeps on giving, but not in a good way. I think that by her signing the Clean Slate Act, it just shows a continuation of a careless idea like bail reform. I believe in second chances, but I also believe the citizens have a right to be informed. And by sealing the records, it is outrageous. How do these things make us feel safer? And I do have to take a short break. I could definitely go into depth, but you're right. How does this make us feel safer? And if you look at the polls, public safety is a major, major concern in this state. So you add the high taxes, you have the poor business climate, public safety, immigration, the list goes on. And then I guess we're supposed to be surprised, every quarter when we see the numbers of people leaving and places like Florida reaping the benefits. So again, thank you to the Assemblyman for sending that, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, right on point, because you just, like I said, the reason I put that text on the screen earlier, you've got bail reform, which has been a disaster. Raise the age, which has led to young people being recruited by gangs because they can't get in trouble. They can do the serious crimes and not get in trouble like the older members of the gang. And then you even have almost like you see in the old movies where young kids are starting their own gangs, going around terrorizing businesses, knowing they can't get in trouble. And then now you have the Clean Slate Act. So thank you again to the Assemblyman. Let's take another short break. If you have any comments, I'd love to read them. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. I try to get to as many as I can, especially when they're in regards to the topic that we're discussing. All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We'll be talking with Executive Director of the Steuben Senior Services Fund, Linda Teeter, here after the next break. A couple quick things. Biden has signed the stopgap spending bill, if you did not hear, averting the government shutdown. Wanted to mention that because we talked about it extensively yesterday. So the FBI is warning that Hamas could be planning a terror attack on American soil. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas said, although the terrorism threat in the United States has remained heightened throughout 2023, Hamas's attack on Israel, along with other recent events, have sharpened the focus of potential attacks on targeted individuals and institutions perceived as symbolic of or tied to the conflict. And I don't know if you saw this piece yet. But to kind of piggyback on that story, there's a pro-Palestinian group, and this is being reported by the New York Post and Fox News. A pro-Palestinian group has posted a map of New York City with locations, quote, tied to, quote, genocide in Gaza. A pro-Palestinian group posted a picture of multiple locations around New York City, it alleges, associated with, and the word they use is genocide in Gaza. The map stated that the locations were considered zones, quote, of direct action. So this, of course, a threat to these groups and organizations made by this pro-Palestinian group. And this comes off the heels of what we talked about yesterday with that anti-Israel protest in front of the DNC that got violent. One Democrat that was in the room actually saying they feared for their life more than on January 6th. That's not normally something a Democrat would say about, to not downplay January 6th, but to say this was worse was a little shocking. Shows you how scary it was at that quote unquote protest. Some of the locations that were on this threatening map of places that are of, quote, direct action. You had NBC News Studio, Fox Corps, where Fox News and the New York Post are located, New York Times, Defense Logistics Agency, Meta, and more. Now, many have come out and denounced this, obviously. This from the New York Post, the group which boasts, the group that shared this threatening map, boasts 121,000 followers on Instagram. It did not specify why those locations were chosen, or targeted is a better word, why they were targeted, or what kind of actions they were proposing be taken. But New York lawmakers have denounced the map, insisting violence is implied, and I think that almost goes without saying when you read their words. Democrat Bronx Representative Richie Torres said it's a coded call for violence against Jews that are proliferating on social media. They went through a lot of New York City, because this is the New York Post, New York City politicians weighing in on it. But most, I haven't seen anybody obviously supporting it, but many coming out and just announcing this threat. But it's at a scary time when, and I know this is going to be hard to segue between the two because we do have our guest coming up next. But when we come back from our guest, I'm going to talk about, it's really going to blow your mind if you haven't heard about this yet. But on TikTok, I don't know if you use TikTok. There's a lot of criticism because it's China owned. There's been that back and forth that came up in the debate where Ramaswamy went after Hallie because her daughter's on it. Anyway, TikTok has been a major news item for a while. Having said that, and I've never used that. I don't know if you have. On TikTok, there are users that are fawning, American users that are fawning is the only word you could use, over Osama bin Laden. Can you believe how dangerous it is becoming in society? We're going to tell you what they had to say, what they are focusing on TikTok. They're American TikTokers, I guess are what they're called, that are fawning over Osama bin Laden. That's coming up a little later. I know this is a tough segue, and I apologize because we're going to go to Executive Director Linda Teeter with the Steuben's Senior Services Fund, because this is a very important organization that I want you to find out all about. I know it's just a heavy news day, so it's kind of tough to find a clean break in between these stories that I think are so important to bring to you. And have a great guest in about a completely different topic. But we'll hear from her when we come back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson Studio. I'd like to welcome in our guest. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
I need you to tell me right from the beginning, tell us about the Steuben's Senior Services Fund.
Okay. Well, about 20 years ago,
Okay.
we created an organization to partner with the Office for the Aging, the Steuben County Office for the Aging, to do some of the things that the office itself could not do.
Right.
Some fundraising, annual campaigns, some special events, and particularly to get into some cutting edge services for the seniors of Steuben County.
Sure. And it's got to be great working with the Office for the Aging.
Absolutely.
They're great.
Love it every day.
They're a great organization.
They are.
So who can join? Who can help?
Well, let's answer those questions one at a time.
Sure.
First of all, if somebody wants to be part of Steuben Senior Services Fund, they can volunteer with us as a wellness ambassador.
Okay.
Now, a wellness ambassador could be a retired nurse or not.
Right.
It just depends. If you like older people and like visiting, we would welcome you as a volunteer to visit our members. Now, our members are part of what we call the Full Circle America program.
Okay.
And that's an in-home services program for people who are getting a little bit older and are concerned about, their safety and security
Sure.
as they age and doing all the things that they have to do and wanting somebody to talk to about it.
Well, what an amazing initiative, if you will. And isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, Full Circle America is what you just were recognized for?
We were.
That's so great.
We were
Congratulations.
So excited for our use of volunteers in the Full Circle America program, and also as part of Steuben Senior Services Fund as a whole. We have a great volunteer board of directors that, wow.
Yeah.
We are so blessed,
You really
and we have other volunteers who help us. They do fundraising and just every aspect. Two of our people, and I know you're going to get into this, but
Sure.
it seems to flow
No,
quite nicely right
absolutely.
here. Two of our people, one a board member, Andy Mazzella, was also recently recognized. He's been on our board for a number of years, and I won't reveal his actual age,
Okay.
but he's a little bit older than I am.
Okay.
And he is a dynamo. He is full of ideas and breaks every mold anybody ever had about an older person. He is just quite something. Volunteers for us at all of our meetings, comes to our big summer fundraiser, and helps out there. Also, we Carol Israel, who is also from Hammondsport, and she is the head of our QKA Aging in Place project, which covers the townships of Urbana, but in particular the village of Hammondsport. And she's another dynamo, and is leading that initiative there, helping people to age in place in their own homes.
What an amazing group of people. And if someone's thinking about volunteering, how much time and how much work is there involved in volunteering?
Well, I think it depends on a person and how much they want to give. If they want to be a wellness ambassador, and we do screen everybody, they go through background checks and all of that kind of thing in this day and age, of course.
I know it.
But once they pass all of that, they can choose to visit one person a month. They can choose to visit 10 people if they would. We sure would like that.
Yeah, of course.
Because we have close to 30 members who need visiting.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it would be very, very helpful if somebody wants to put a lot of time into it, they can.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you found it difficult to get volunteers?
Sometimes yes, and other
Goes in
times
cycles, maybe?
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It's cyclical, but if we hit on the right person at the right time and they see what we're doing, they see how we're impacting lives. My assistant and I just spoke at the Corning Area Aging in Place group here in Corning today, and one of our members of Full Circle America spoke very eloquently about what it means to her. And the people that heard that couldn't help but, be in tears and be very, very impacted by what they were hearing. So if we happen to speak to an audience that has a person in it that, they're just really motivated by what we say, that definitely does a lot to get them involved.
And so this is a foolish question because I already knew the answer, but it must be such a rewarding experience for people that do have the time to volunteer.
Oh, absolutely. I I can't tell you what it means to people to be part of this.
But also to your clients too. It's got to be rewarding to them as well. Do you know what I mean? To have these people come out and just have someone to talk to and just have that camaraderie bond.
Oh yes, we use a lot of different things. In our program we have the volunteers, which is a huge component, but we also have technology that we use.
Oh, okay.
And we have hooked up all of our members with that are part of Full Circle America with technology. They have a couple of different options. The first thing is always the Amazon Echo Show.
Oh, okay.
And they have that, and they can activate it just by voice command. So if they need to call for help, they want to call their son, their daughter. If they want to have lunch with their granddaughter in Louisiana, they can arrange it and then sit and talk with each other and have lunch together. We call that video dining, by the way. And it keeps them connected. So we have live connections. We also have a care coordinator, as I said, works with me. His name is Gabe.
Okay.
And I say that very definitely because people want to call him Dave, but it's Gabe.
Gabe.
And so Gabe does a lot of what we call drop-in calls with people to keep them involved, to make sure that they're not lonely, see how things are going with the program. And then the people that we contract with up in Maine, the actual innovators of Full Circle to begin with, Dr. Alan Teal is his name. We call him Chip. He and his team up there in Maine also do drop-in calls and telephone calls with our people. So there's a lot. We call it building a circle of care around a person.
Wow, there's a lot of moving pieces. But I know some people, before we go, I know some people can't volunteer. Their time just doesn't allow it. You had mentioned fundraisers. Are there ways to donate throughout the year?
Absolutely. We just entered our annual fundraising campaign time. All of our invitations to give went out in the mail. I think it was yesterday.
Okay.
And as we spoke this morning, I had people come up and say, how can I join? I'd like to give.
Right.
And so we're always open to people sending a donation. And I don't know how we would get the word out about it, but it's just Steuben Senior Services Fund, 3 East Pulteney Square in Bath.
Okay.
And you can also call the Office for Aging if you missed that address, and they will give you the address because we're co-located, so it's pretty simple.
Pretty perfect.
And so if anyone wants to get involved. And the other thing is, too, for our annual summer fundraiser, we call it Bubbly and Brunch.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun. It's held at the Pleasant Valley Winery. Sure. Mr. Doyle there donates the venue for us.
Oh, that's great.
And refreshments. And then we usually have a nice caterer that provides the brunch, and just a marvelous outpouring of donations from the community. We have businesses, small and large. We have sponsors, again, small and large, that give to this. This past year, this one-day event, it's actually 3 hours, so I call it a one-day event. We raised almost $20,000 at that one event.
That's amazing.
So it is amazing. And it's because of the hard work of an awful lot of people and the business community and people who give to us.
Well, and that also shows that people recognize what you're doing.
Yes.
You know, so it's kind of a pat on the back in its own way. Is that the best place to find out more as well, the Office for the Aging? Just have them call to get in touch with you?
That's the easiest way. We're right there located with the Office for Aging in Bath. But the folks in, if it happened to be somebody in Corning that heard this broadcast, they could call the local branch of the Office for Aging located here in Corning, and they would certainly give the address.
Oh, that's great. So before we go, let's have you back on right around the time for the fundraiser so we can promote it, okay?
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
I would love to come back on again. Thanks,
All right.
Frank.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. We'll
Thank
be right
you.
back with Frankly Speaking after this. Stay with Thank you for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you to our guest, Linda Teeter, for being on the program. So we're talking about this shocking piece from the New York Post because we tie it in with the threats made by that pro-Palestinian group saying basically targeting certain venues in New York City by putting out a map to their, 121,000 followers. Then you start to see these, I think that, what would they be? Gen Z. People sharing and making it all about themselves. I don't have to explain too much about social media, but TikTok, obviously making it about themselves. And the post asks a question. I think it's a really good piece by Brad Palumbo. Why TikTokers are fawning over Osama bin Laden. This is going to be shocking to you, but millions of views on videos going viral of people, influencers they're called, praising the writings of Osama bin Laden, calling them such things as mind-blowing and eye-opening. One person, again, you'll hear the me kind of thing, the narcissism in this, but one TikTok person that went viral with this, Lynette Atkins, said, "I need everyone to stop what they're doing right now and go read." I need. Okay, if you need. It's literally 2 pages. This is a quote. "Go read A Letter to America. And please come back here and just let me know what you think, because I feel like I'm going through like an existential crisis right now. And a lot of people are." So that was a brilliant political thought piece that came out on TikTok. And Brad Palumbo makes the argument that Americans should read the letter, but they should read it critically and see it for the deeply anti-Semitic and conspiratorial, morally bankrupt apologist for barbarism. Instead, several TikTokers in these viral videos promoting the letter openly state they now realize bin Laden, and I quote, was right. I don't think we can emphasize what the education system and colleges have done to these young people. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, by the way. It's bizarre, if unsurprising, to see the stance from supposedly woke progressives, because they must have breezed past the part of the letter, or maybe, skipped over it. Maybe they didn't read it thoroughly, where bin Laden names our country's tolerance for homosexuality, separation of church and state, and sexual liberation for women as motivating reasons for terrorism and the terrorists' desire to destroy America. So they must have skipped over that part because it wasn't convenient for this woke argument, because it is progressives sharing this. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds on this, but I think we have to look at what we're dealing with here. Even if they hadn't read bin Laden's infamous letter, young people have already been spoon-fed a form of the intellectually bankrupt collectivism worldview that Osama bin Laden espouses through the leftist message that dominates college campuses, digital media, and social media discourse. Yeah, social media, you see celebrities sharing very often, and these influencers, very shocking anti-American rhetoric. You're seeing it here on college campuses. You see it. It was eye-opening, I think, for many, even though we knew it was there. It was eye-opening for many after the attack on Israel. I'll continue. It's not enough just to condemn or write off the millions of young people who have fallen prey to this perspective. And I think that's a very good point. You can't give up, because there's a piece by Kirsten Fleming that kind of mocks these people, and they're worthy of mocking. But if that's how we do it, that's never going to change hearts and minds. Again, the narcissism, the ego that these people have, and thinking they found something shocking, and look how brilliant I am for thinking this is a good thing. I know. If we mock that, because it is mock-worthy, that means that we don't ignore the real threat it poses. Instead, Palumbo says, we must reach out to youth and try somehow to help them see the error of their ways. Because if we fail, the America our descendants inherit will be fundamentally unrecognizable from the one we all know and love. And as I said, this piece and that was Brad Palumbo, but Kristen Fleming says that, it goes on to really mock what she calls the Gen Z darling. And I'm not criticizing Ms. Fleming, because the piece is very good, but we've got to, I believe, take it more seriously. Never mind his spotty record on women's and gay rights, meaning Osama bin Laden, nor the mass murder of more than 3,000 innocent Americans. An attack that turned Lower Manhattan into a cancerous pit, which continues to kill first responders to this very day. He sure is dreamy, Kirsten Fleming said. That is to the Gen Z darlings. It's young progressive women who discovered this letter to America. In the grand tradition of TikTokers claiming bold social discoveries, the letter is going viral on the Chinese-owned app, which also acts as an American-hating echo chamber. Yeah, and we know what he espoused, but you can find that piece for yourself because I am running late. And I know I got on a tangent there. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. So we're talking about the TikTokers that the videos have gone viral. Millions of people watching, praising or thinking it's trendy to praise Osama bin Laden's message that attacks America. And then you can't wonder, like Brad Palumbo said, where this comes from. It comes from colleges who have been teaching this kind of hatred for America. Look at this. You've seen a pushback at universities. Donors saying, I'm not going to donate any longer because of this anti-Semitism. Some coverage of this. Well, Harvard, specifically, who was really a focal point for a while, focusing on the anti-Semitism on college campuses. 100 Harvard professors have slammed the university, specifically the president, for bowing to donor pressure and condemning anti-Semitism. Criticizing the president, who didn't even do that great of a job, criticizing anti-Semitism. But that was too much for them. More than 100 Harvard professors have sent a letter to university president Claudine Gay, condemning her for issuing a statement opposing anti-Semitism on campus, claiming she was bowing to the interests of wealthy donors and alumni and was infringing on the free speech of students. And then we wonder why we see these TikTokers, or why we see this rise in anti-Semitism. I don't want to read their statement all the way through. You get the idea. The letter, but it did say the letter went on to urge university officials to affirm its commitment to the freedom of thought, inquiry, and expression in light of the extraordinary pressure being brought to bear upon critics of the state of Israel and advocates of the Palestinian people. There must be room on a university campus for debate about the actions of state, including the state of Israel. Let me ask, just a mental mind game here, and I'd love to talk to one of these professors. Would they feel the same way about commitment to freedom of thought, inquiry, and expression if it were, let's say, maybe a conservative speaker coming on campus to speak, or a conservative student who hands in a paper to one of these professors that has a more conservative mindset? I think that's a fair question to ask. I think it's interesting when they pick and choose when freedom of expression, thought becomes so very, very important to them. But it can come as no surprise when we see this very disturbing trend, if this is where it is coming from. And you've got Cornell right down the road from us. They're part of 7 schools that are under federal probes for anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Right down the road in Cornell. And so, again, we can mock, we can say, oh, these young people with their zany ideas, it won't work in the real world. Well, they are. They're infiltrating the real world. They are, people are adapting to them. So their zany ideas are becoming more commonplace, becoming more accepted, and that's why you see that quote-unquote protest in front of the DNC. Now, think about that. They did that in front of the DNC. It got violent, 6 police officers hurt. And now you're starting to see the whispers, this coming from CNN this morning. Protests encapsulate progressive angst that could imperil Biden's 2024 campaign. What CNN is saying here, specifically Stephen Collinson, hey Biden, you better not keep being pro-Israel much longer, you better start being a lot more vocal against Israel, or this could hurt you with progressives. Because again, these progressive groups were the ones protesting in front of the DNC. They don't believe the Democrats have been, how do I remember this, anti-Israel enough. But rising anger and splits inside the Democrat Party over the ferocity of Israel's incursion into Gaza and the lack of a ceasefire. So this, all Stephen Collinson is saying is, Biden, are you paying attention? You better be calling for a ceasefire. You better attack Israel for defending themselves. And, I've got to say, I don't want to read any more of his point, but, he does say this. Those divides threaten to exasperate his weakness within his own party. This is just a threat to Biden, which may pose the biggest risk to his hopes of a second term. So Stephen Collinson that is a letter directly to President Biden warning him, you better ease up on your support of Israel. And we have been sadly predicting that will happen. We started to see it when he mentioned pause as compared to, not as compared to, it is the same thing as a ceasefire. But I got to give Blinken a little bit of credit. Now, Secretary of State Blinken did do the disclaimer that they always do. Biden does the same thing, that Israel has an absolute obligation to do everything possible to avoid harming citizens. That's great. Okay, fine. But I thought, let me read the quote for you before we go to break. But we also have to ask ourselves, what would we do, meaning Americans, what would any country do when faced with this terrorist organization that had slaughtered its people and then said very clearly that it tends to do it again and again and again? Yeah, they said they're going to be October 7th nonstop. If given the ability to do that, the capacity and the ability to do that. And that's the problem that Israel has to deal with. It's a problem that any of us have to deal with. The other thing is, and this is the point that I wanted to bring up, I don't hear the hue and the cry for Hamas to respect international humanitarian law, for Hamas to maybe get out of the buildings, to get out of the hospitals, to get out of the schools so that civilians are in danger, for Hamas to surrender. That would protect Palestinian civilians immediately. I'm not hearing anyone say that. The dilemma for any country in this situation is, what do you do to make sure that not only are you defending your people, but you're trying to make sure that this can't happen again? Yes. So will we start to see a weakness from President Biden? Time will tell, but I believe that piece from CNN was a clear warning shot saying, you better be careful. Your polls are already bad, and now you're losing what Stephen Collinson said is the progressive. So the progressive wing is where we're seeing these strains of anti-Semitism. And that's their words, not mine. So we're going to get away from this topic when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Okay, we're changing topics here, not Frankly Speaking, but before I do, I want to read this comment from a viewer. As a Desert Storm Marine Sergeant, thank you, of course. If these people cannot stand and support our flag and our veterans, get out. Get out is all in caps, and I appreciate that sentiment. And a lot of people have called for, even on both sides, really, of the political aisle, saying that if you are here as some type of foreign exchange student, something like that, and you're pushing this pro-Hamas message, we should revoke that visa. But I do want to change the topic because we're running a little late. Pardon me. A new poll out showing that Biden would be defeated by Nikki Haley in a general election matchup by 10 points. You know my thoughts on this, and I don't want to keep belaboring them, but that the media is suspiciously pushing Nikki Haley for some reason. So a new Marquette Law School poll, national survey of registered voters, finds that President Joe Biden is trailing against each of the top 3 potential Republican candidates. Which is kind of interesting if you read that headline even. Survey finds Biden trailing 3 GOP opponents. Trump dominating GOP primary. Who are the 3 opponents? But anyway, we'll find out now. South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley leads Biden 55% to 45%. Former President Trump leads Biden 52% to 48%. While Florida Governor Ron DeSantis holds a 51 to 49 advantage. Now, among likely voters, Haley sees her advantage rise to 12 percentage points. Excuse me. It just interesting to me, the push for Nikki Haley, when this article still tells me, unless I'm misreading it, that Trump would still win, and Trump is, at this point, dominating the GOP primary. How am I doing on time? I know, I'm sorry. We do this at the end where I run really late. But then you have pieces like this. Why Nikki Haley is ready for this ugly media moment. If I'm being honest, the coverage of her has been pretty glowing, and that's what scared me. I like Nikki Haley, too. It just scares me when the media and people don't ever want to see Republicans win, tell us who the best person is to win. We heard it with Romney. We heard it with, going back to Dole, probably before. These are just the ones I remember. McCain. Let's take our last break. Then we're going to wrap up. We're going to move fast, so stay with us. Get your last-minute comments in. This is Frankly Speaking. Wrapping things up here on Frankly Speaking. Boy, this show goes fast. It goes fast every day, but Fridays we had so much to talk about. Did you see what Joe Biden had to say about Governor Newsom? We've talked about this kind of secret campaign that Governor Newsom has been running for president, maybe thinking that Biden makes the decision that he doesn't want to run for re-election or something happens. And we've talked about it quite extensively. So Joe Biden, on Wednesday, I just saw this, just crossed my desk this morning, said, I want to talk about Governor Newsom. This is Joe Biden. I want to thank him. He's been one, I'll say heck of a governor, because we could have kids watching. He's been one heck of a governor, man. As a matter of fact, he can be anything he wants. He can have the job I'm looking for. What? Could we see a passing of the torch? The beginnings of? You know what I've been saying for a while. I do feel that Gavin Newsom is running. He just, who was it that said the other day, just doesn't have the courage to actually say it or have the guts to say it. I can't remember who it was that we quoted, that there are other Democrats running, Marianne Williamson and some other names being thrown around, but he doesn't have the courage to just come out and say he's running. I always forget the other guy's name, which is not good for a campaign, but there is another Democrat running. If you want to give it a look at the New York Post, there's kind of been done before, but it's obvious to all that Biden is too old for the job. It's been talked about extensively, but the New York Post editorial board really said that the meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping put that even more under a magnifying glass, and speculating in a way, something that we've been bringing up, that will he try to run like he did last time from the basement, because he's already working, as they put here, banker's hours. It's a fair question. I don't think that's a winning campaign, but I don't think they have any other choice but to campaign that way. Well, we are out of time. Thank you to the Executive Director of Steubenville Senior Services, Linda Teeter, for being our guest on the program. That's amazing work that they do, and I'm so glad that she could tell us about it. To all of our hunting friends, I hope that you have good luck this weekend. Stay safe out there, and I'd love to see the pictures. You can text them to the number, pictures, or you can tell us the tale. I love to hear them. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll be back Monday morning starting at 7 with Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV, Big Fox.